Corporate Finance Core, Topic 8, Strategic Finance and M&A. Learning Objective Number 2, Analyze the case of East Coast Yacht's IPO. So East Coast Yacht's IPO is in the textbook, and it follows this case of this company throughout the entire textbook. Well, let's focus just on the IPO part. So East Coast Yachts, ECY, has been experiencing fast growth, and the future looks like clear sailing. However, the fast growth means the company's growth can no longer be funded by internal sources. So they have decided the time is right to take the company public. So they've entered discussions with an investment bank, and here are some of the numbers they received. So the investment bank's going to charge an underwriting fee of 4% of bond issuances. So that's actually, they've already used this investment bank, and when they issue debt, if they issue $100 of debt, $4 of that goes back to the investment banker for doing that. However, on stock, underwriting fees are often 6 to 8% on average, and for this company, it's 7% of the initial stock offering. So if they raise $100 through the IPO, $7 is going to go back to the investment bank. And there's also a number of other fees associated with going public. So let's think about some of the fees here. So they're going to spend about $1.6 million in legal fees, $15,000 for the Securities and Exchange Commission registration fees, $20,000 in other filing fees, and to be listed on the NASDAQ, they must pay $100,000 to be listed. There's also transfer agent fees of about $10,000 and printing and engraving expenses of $540,000. And they'd expect to also pay $125,000 of other expenses associated with the IPO. Finally, once they go public, they expect to pay up to $300,000 a year to have audited financial statements prepared. So that's a lot of money. So let's try to summarize this on the next page with a couple questions that were in the textbook. So the first one says, well, how could you decide on how much money to issue? So they feel they could raise between, say, 60 and 90 million. So the question is, why would you say raise more money than you think you actually need? So one answer is, well, there's a lot of fixed expenses related to this IPO. Maybe I should raise $90 million and then have that money available. So the question is, why not raise 90 when right now you really think you need 60? So the number one advantage of raising more money is you're going to save future issuance costs and time. And also, if there's just an opportunity that comes up to maybe buy a competitor or some special facility, you have the money ready. The disadvantage is by issuing that stock, you're going to have loss of ownership. You're going to give up some of your voting rights and some of your dividends. And then lastly, another disadvantage is reduction in EPS as cash earns a very low interest rate. So if I raise an extra $30 million and put it in, say, a money market earning 0.5% a year, that's not too good for as an investment. So there's the trade-off. Should I try to get a little more money and leave it somewhere and just put it in cash and wait for when I need it and save some expenses, or should I just go for the money I need? So the question is, well, how much as a percentage of the amount raised would this typical example of an IPO cost? So let's just assume that they raised $70 million. They chose to IPO $70 million, issue $70 million worth of stock. So let's add up all the fees and try to figure out how much it would actually cost them. Well, the investment bank is going to charge them 7%. So there's $4.9 million right there. The registration and filing fees, $1.6 million, NASDAQ and other fees, and auditing, all that together is about $7.6 million to raise $70 million, which is, as a percentage, that's 11%. So that's quite costly. When you think about cost of capital for firms tend to be, say, between 6 and 9%. You're going to pay an additional 11% on top of that. So another question always comes up in valuation is, do I include that in WACC when trying to decide? Say I wanted that $70 million to buy a competitor, and I want to do an NPV of the acquisition. Do I take my normal weighted average cost of capital and then add 11% of it to it? And I think, in a sense, I think you should, because this is a cost of raising the capital. Now, a lot of the expenses might go away in future years as it becomes easier and easier to issue more and more stock. So on this topic, we just analyzed a typical case of an IPO using the textbook example of East Coast Yachts.